This is going to be a little bit different. This is a buddy of mine's 1953 Ford F100. I'm not sure what model it would be called. I originally saw this truck a few years ago when he first bought it, and it was all original. It was from Colorado, and it was in pretty good shape. It needed a little bit of body work, needed a tailgate. His was beat up pretty bad. The bed's been completely rebuilt. It's all new metal, and it used to be a flathead V8 with manual brakes and manual steering, and he removed the flathead V8 and the transmission that was in it and installed something else, and it runs and drives very well. It handles very well now. Of course, he changed tire size, put nice big wide tires on, and he did away with the original gauges and went with these aftermarket Dolphin gauges, aftermarket shifter, aftermarket steering wheel. And he came to me one day, or he called me and asked me about, he'd heard about putting electric assist power steering on it, and I told him I'd read a little bit about it, I've heard about it, and that this one certain unit from a Toyota Prius works very well. So he brought it to me, and I looked at the schematic and figured out how we could wire it to make it work. And you know, it's actually right down here covered up. He had an upholstery shop make this cover for it with Velcro right there. And man, this thing runs and drives. For the power steering, all you have to do is turn a key on and you have power steering. You hear this thing click. Like, if you try it without, it's pretty hard. Then you add the electric and it's so much easier, even sitting still. But anyways, let's open up the hood, show you what he did. I tried to find a motor for him. He was looking for a specific one, and guess I need two hands. All right, so there you go. So he's looking for a 302 out of a late model Ford, and that's what this one was. It was a 302 multi-port injected, but he changed the intake over, went with an HEI distributor. He likes carburation, so he went that way with it and added the power brakes. It runs and drives extremely well. Surprising it's still on the factory chassis. That power steering sure makes a big difference. He had the radiator made. Like I said, it was a factory flathead V8, but he had that. He had it. He didn't have it. He did it himself. He removed it. It runs pretty good. I guess we need to start it up too, huh? I don't know what it is, but I seem to gravitate. Most of my friends are older than me, and he's no different. He's 73. We put in this shifter. It's one of the basic ones. There's no lock for any of the gears though. It's just there's park and there's reverse, neutral, and then drive, but there's no gate locks on it anywhere. His son's best friend that he's known since he was in grade school did all the paint work. This is the original color the truck was. It was originally an enamel green, so that's what he went back with. It's still enamel green, and it sounds pretty good. He ran dual exhaust. The running boards are Raptor linered, as is the inside of the bed on the sides. So I guess that brings us to what's the reason it's here. So I guess that brings it to the reason it's here, and here it is. We have no turn signals at all. It has brake lights, but no turn signals. So he's brought it to me so that I can do the wiring. When he bought it, it didn't have turn signals. The truck is equipped with dual filament lights and bulbs for the turn signals, but they do not work. And he does not really care for doing electrical work, so he prefers if, oh, he asked me if I'd do it, and I said of course. So that's what we're going to be getting into. We're going to put it in my wife's little garage so it's not outside, because I don't want a tree limb to fall and hit it or something weird. So we'll put it in there, and then we're going to look into it and see what we can figure out. I have a feeling there's a problem in the steering column turn signal switch, but I won't know till we take it all apart. But when I do, I'll bring you along. Alright, so the task at hand is I need to make these turn signals work. What's going on with it is you have brake lights, which actually illuminate on the dash through the turn signal indicators. And if you watch, I turn this to the right turn, and then we lose the indicator on the right, but we still light up on the other side. If I go to the left turn, you can see the right side lights up. So what we need to do first is get a look inside the turn signal housing, and let's see if we have the right contacts. What I think is going on is the switch is no good. They've added this power brake kit, and it came with a stoplight switch, so we have a good stoplight. The problem is going to be we have no flasher here to begin with, so we'll have to figure that out, why we have no flasher and what wiring is part of what. So just so we have a clue of what we're doing, we're going to pull all this wiring down out of here so we can get a better look at it, and we'll talk about the general operation of this circuit so we know where to go from here. So whenever I'm starting to work on an electrical system like this, the first thing I do is gather up all the same tools: digital voltmeter, some test leads, strippers, cutters, and then I like to use an 1156 or 1157 bulb, because this is a nice way to test a circuit and a wire to make sure it can carry a load, because this is somewhere between 2 and 3 amps is what this will pull. So I like to have that, and then understanding how the circuit works is the next thing. And unfortunately, you know, I don't work on a lot of 50s. This is a 53. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take the steering wheel off, take the adapter off, and let's get into where I'm going to take the steering wheel off, take the adapter off, take that cover off. Let's get down to where the turn signal switch is, which is inside of here, which more than likely is part of our problem, because it seems like it's stiff and really doesn't have much spring to it. There could be a problem inside there. So understanding the circuit and how it works makes electrical diagnosing so much easier. So that's what we're going to do. Let's get this apart first. All right, so we got the steering wheel off, and I use this 3-slot puller screwed in the adapter, and it forces on the center shaft and pulls that adapter off. Next thing we got to do is take this shaft off. This is the actual turn signal lever. It comes up to the bottom, screws into here, and then there's 3 screws underside that hold that turn signal switch in there. So then we'll take them loose, pull it out, and we'll get a look at it. Now that we got it out, we can flip it over here, and we're going to try and find where we have power and which terminals we have signal coming out. So the way that this should work normally is you have 2 powers. You have one coming in from the stoplight switch. You should have another one that's hot all the time. You should have another one coming in that is key on just for the turn signals. So the way the way the diagram should work is the power for the stoplight comes in, and it feeds in when the signal lever is in a neutral position, it will feed both left and right of the front and the rear. It will feed both the left and the right of the rear for stoplights. When you move the turn signal lever to one or the other, it changes the connections in there and only sends stoplight to the one that is not engaged to the turn signal power. We have to find our power, our key on power, and our stoplight power coming in here. So I pulled the turn signal switch out and started testing, and then noticed that right there, one of the wires is broke off, and this thing is really stuck. Like it doesn't want to return like it's supposed to. So rather than fight with it and take it, I was going to take it apart, bend these out and clean it all up, but since that was busted, I'm like, screw it. I ordered another one, and here's a new one, and it works, you know, pretty easy. It's momentary each way, returns easy like it should, because these don't have a cancel. As far as the steering wheel turns and shuts it off, they shut off. You have to shut them off manually. It came with this schematic that's quite possibly one of the worst ones I've ever seen, but that's okay. We just use an ohm meter and just find out which one's which that way. Blue is our flasher. This is the flasher feeds it for the turn signals, and this green with a green connector here, just a straight green, that's a stoplight switch input. And then you have a circuit for the right front, and then this is the left front, and then these two are for the two rear. Significance of having two for the front and two for the rear is just for the stoplight. So if you didn't have two isolated circuits, you just had the brake light switch on it, then what would happen is your front turn signals would light up with the brake lights as well. And when you hit the brakes and turn signal, one would stay on, the other one would blink like a turn signal. So that's the importance. And it's all done in a circuitry so that when you have a turn signal turned on, it's isolated from the stoplight switch. The one that's not turned on is able to have continuity to the stoplight switch, so that's how it turns on. So now I'm going to go ahead and put this back in the actual holder, screw it into place, put it back in the column, just so I'm not fumbling around with it. I can actually use a lever, and then we'll start figuring out the wiring. I pulled all the old wiring out because in this they had power. This was weird. It has power going from the fuse box into the stoplight switch, and then it's fused, and then this goes right back to the fuse box out there under the hood with another fuse. So it shouldn't have went outside. It should have came in here, the stoplight switch, and then went to the turn signal. But instead it went out there. It was just really odd. And then all the turn signals themselves were tied together under electrical wire nuts. So we're gonna remove all this and see what we can figure out. Got it changed over, but don't forget there's a spring and a retainer there, and that spring has to sit on top of that. I'll tell you what though, this China switch, I do not envy guys that work on these vintage vehicles and have to deal with this China crap all the time. That's just miserable. I'll tell you what, it only took me 3 times to get it in there right. Apparently, when I took it apart, this was not sitting right that way from the original. So I cleaned up the stem here that goes in because it was pretty stiff, and now it looks like we might have, that's the lock. Yeah, we might have what we need now. I think that clip's going to be okay. It's not perfect, but I might try and push that edge just a little bit more. See if we can lock it in there a little better. Well, apparently this was not assembled or been messed with before, because when I put it back the way I think it belongs, it works correctly. It's, if you get up close, then it locks into place. You just barely get it out of that lock, and it snaps back where it's supposed to. Uses tension right here and a ramp, so it's got a ramp up on that side. Once you get past the edge of the ramp, it locks into place, and then as soon as you take your signal lever, you just barely touch it to get past that ramp, then it returns. So, and I greased up the stem back here, cleaned this up real good, put a little bit of light grease on it. So let's go put this in and we can start testing. Alright, so it's very careful to route the wires up and around and not between the mounting screws here. So we don't want to get them pinched down in there. So now that this is back in, I got this cancel spring or tension spring on it. That's the way it should be. So I'm not going to put this back together yet because you know, every time I do, it seems like then there's a problem with something, so we'll wait on that. But now we're going to start fishing the wires down here and start doing some testing. We're going to have to create our own flasher and what have you, because the only thing we have right now, let me get some better light here, is this is ignition power, so that will go to our flasher. That's all we have right now. The stoplight switch is wired hot all the time, so we'll have to come off of here. So we got to pull this off of the fuse block where it's going outside. I think I'm just going to leave that for right now because that might be going to one of the taillights, and I don't know how they got that out there. So, and probably running more wires because we don't have enough here to do what we need to address everything. Okay, let's see if I can explain this, how this turn signal switch works in this old truck, how the system works, turn signals and stoplights. It's going to be tough. It may be tough to follow because I'm not very good at this. Anyways, so what we have is two separate circuits in here. We have turn signals and stoplights in this switch. So basically what happens is we have what's supposed to be key on power would come out, come down to our flasher. Now typically a flasher is not this one, this is a heavy duty, but your typical flasher is nothing more than a circuit breaker. The power comes in, and as the power comes in and there's no load, it sits like this. So say this is power coming in and this is the other side, and this is just a piece of basically of metal, spring metal type. So when you put a load on this metal, it's kind of like spring metal. So when it's normally no load on it, it will sit like this, and as you apply the load to it by turn signals on, what happens is it heats up and heats up until it finally pops loose. When that spring metal pops, it breaks connection, and then once it cools down, it springs back and makes connection again. And that's why turn signals are typically, if everything's working, the load never changes, so the timing is pretty much the same all the time. And that's why sometimes on a right turn, it might work just like this, and if you have a bulb out on the left, then it goes much faster because it's not as much load, so it cools down faster, and it just keeps doing that. So anyways, after this, it comes into the turn signal switch. It comes up here to a contact, and then also coming in here is our stoplight switch. Our stoplight switch is normally open until acted upon, and it comes up through here. So the purpose of having two separate 12 volts coming up to here is because when you have, let's say, your left turn signal on, and you're slowing down, you want to hit the brakes, you still want the right hand side brake light to illuminate so people know you're slowing down. You also have two extra wires coming out that are not connected to your brake lights. They're completely separate from the brake light switch. So they come in only on your turn signals. And what happens there is they go just to the front so that when you hit your brake lights, it's not contacting and turning on brake lights in the front. Because you don't want, have left turn on, hit the brakes, now your right one comes on solid. So you have two separate circuits. And the way it does that is just by positioning of contacts. So when we act on a left turn, which I have temporarily wired up with some pigtails. These are just jumper wires that come out of here, and I've got them hooked to lights. So that's our left turn, but you want to hit the brakes as well, and this would be the right side turn signal. We want to see that come on like that. So in order to achieve that, we have to have two separate sets of contacts. So what happens in the turn signal is it's on one side, in this particular setup, the brake light switch is on the other. So when you're moving this up this way, as you move this up, it connects these, but it disconnects that light from the stoplight because it's moved away, and now it connects the opposite side with the stoplight switch like that. Same thing on the other side. So it moved. We moved down this way. Now we've connected our bulb to the turn signal side of the switch, but we've disconnected that from the brake light side and left the other side hooked up to the brake light side. And if we did it right, then how we have stoplight and turn signal on both. Now what we should be able to do is change our jumpers to just the front, and we should only have turn signals if we've got it wired correctly. Now I've changed over to the front circuit. So here's our left turn and our right turn, and then we'll hit the brakes. We should get nothing. So that tells us that we are wired correctly. Now, if you had four-way hazards, typically they're on the column, not on this truck, but older versions of vehicles. And then what you're doing there is you are connecting both turn signals to the flasher or a second flasher, depending on how your vehicle's wired. But that's the basics of how these old turn signals work. This is called a turn signal cam. This is not a self-canceling, so you gotta bump it to cancel. But now what we have to do is find out which wires we need up underneath here and under the hood, because we don't have enough. These were all tied together. The left front and the left rear were tied together, so he didn't have any turn signals, but mostly that's because the turn signal switch was bad. But even if he had turn signals, when he hit the brakes, the front end would have illuminated because it was wired wrong. So let's keep moving. Alright, so I've got everything tidied up, run the wires down the column, and I've spliced them all and got them tucked up underneath here. I've identified all of them, then spliced them, tucked them up underneath here. And what he had going on was he had this is where the wires that actually go to the lights, they come out of the cluster right here. So these four right here are for your turn signals. These are the two front. This is the left front being closest. This is the right front. This is left rear. This is right rear. And they correspond down here, of course, so you can see they go to the rear, these go to the front. Well, the problem was he had these tied together, so that's why it was given the brake lights in the front, but we didn't have any turn signals. So I got everything done except for there's one wire hanging down here, which apparently is the one that feeds this turn signal. So I need to get that done next, so I got to crawl underneath there and find out what's going on. All right, we got it all back together. Left turn, right turn, marker lights, high beams. I like that cluster set. Let's check the lights. Okay, it's all done. Now we're gonna test the lights and make sure everything's okay. Go ahead and hop in it. Go ahead and do the front turn signals first. You got left turn, right turn. Okay, turn them off. Hit the brakes. Let up. Okay, hit the brakes again. Left turn. Hit the brakes. Hold them. Left turn. Now right turn. Hey, life is good. Okay, hang on. Leave the turn signals on. I want to make sure the front turn signals or front markers don't come on with the brake lights. Turn them off. I hit the brakes. Hey, looky there. Okay, that's it. She is all done. We can call him and have him come on out and pick it up. I can't tell you how much I really want to drive this truck, but it's not mine. And man, if something happened while I was on the road,
even though he said you're welcome to, I wouldn't.
Yeah, he said I'm welcome to, but good Lord, if I had an accident in this thing, that would ruin our friendship. It's not worth it. Boy, do I like it. I like the fact that he's not looking for show quality. He was looking for a driver, and that's what this truck is. It's a full-out driver. You know, he intends to drive it and use it. He runs to the parts store with this thing and all over. You know, it's very nice. Very nice. Anyways, I guess that's the end of this one. If something happens, we go for a drive, I'll bring you along, but I just don't think it's a good idea. But hope that turn signal thing helps somebody out who might be trying to do the same thing. A lot of people think it's confusing. It's really not. It's, you know, it's like anything else. If you understand how it works and you're able to see how it works, there's nothing to it. It's very simple. But thanks for watching, guys. Catch you on the next one.